Welcome to the Always Better Than Yesterday interview sessions. I am your host, Ryan Hartley. This channel exists to inspire and encourage your heart-centered leadership. Each week, I share interviews with some of the greatest heart-centered leaders in the world. I hope our time spent together helps you leave a heartprint where those around you are left better than yesterday. Please visit abty.co.uk if you would like us in your corner. These interview sessions are brought to you by Matt Media Online Marketing, an independent agency who specialise in content marketing, helping business owners get their message seen by the right audience. If you want to get your business seen through the power of social media, head to mattmedia.online. On episode 226, I'm joined by Jim Hughes, coach and founder of Become Untamed. Jim helps humble high performers go from the grind to aligned by having them get to know themselves and find their playground. Jim's energy is infectious. He is a man clearly living in alignment with who he is and doing what he was born to do. We love Jim's vision for coaching, including campfires and cold water. Be sure to connect with Jim and consider attending his Untamed Potential event later in the year, which you can find the links in the show notes. But here we go, episode 226 with Jim Hughes. Jim, welcome to the Always Better Than Yesterday podcast. How are you, brother?
I'm in rude health. Thank you, Ryan. How are you?
Yeah, good to see you, mate. You and I connected a few years back in a local town, Bradford-on-Avon. But before that, you spent all this time as a digital nomad. Like, where in the world are you from? Like, where was home?
Home is Chester, northwest England. So I was born and raised there, lived there until I was, until after A-levels. Went to uni, so 18, and then Liverpool for three years at uni. Then straight to Canada for 5 years because I wanted to delay adulthood. I wasn't ready for it after uni.
Yeah.
After 8 hours of lectures per week, I thought, you know what, that's enough adulthood for now. It's too much. Time for a bit of me time.
Yeah, I was in doing my prep as I do. I go through LinkedIn profiles, and at the very bottom of yours, it's like, here was my playtime. This was my time to play. It's like a 5-year stretch in Canada. I've done all these crazy things. It's like, yeah, like if only people were more kind of authentic and transparent about those things.
Oh God, yeah. And I was so grateful that my parents were not only supportive but actively encouraging of that. Like, I'm finishing uni and I felt the need I should get a job, and they're like, why would you do that? You got all your life to work in a job that you may not love. So just go and enjoy it. We wish we'd had the opportunity to do so. So they pretty much pushed me to go and live out there and ski and camp and adventure and stuff. It was amazing.
Yeah, I love that. And I love talking to people with such a purpose within their spirit, purpose within their business. And I know enough about purpose to know that sometimes comes from passion, but it sometimes comes from pain. And you're talking about being untamed and knowing yourself and knowing your playground. I guess the opposite of that is maybe there's a time in your life where you didn't know who you are. Maybe you weren't in the right playground. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, 100%. And you're bang on. A lot of people's purpose comes from pain. It's the way it is. We're more incentivized or motivated to move away from pain than towards pleasure. And when we've been through pain, it means a lot to us when we've come out the other side, and we want to help other people avoid it. And that's been my case. It wasn't severe pain in the relative term, but it was. So after Canada for 5 years, which was playtime, I then thought, right, now it's time to be an adult. My liver can't handle it anymore. My body can't. My wallet certainly can't. That's when I moved to Australia for 5 years, and that was the work career growth side of things. And I ended up running an engineering business out there, which was very interesting, chaotic, exciting, and nothing that I was even remotely qualified for, like not even close. So it was the excitement masked the misalignment that was there from day one. But I didn't care. Like, it was my first proper job, and I ended up sort of running this business at the age of like 27 or something. And then eventually the cracks started to appear, and I didn't love the industry. I didn't like the people. I didn't like what I was selling. I didn't like the fact I was going to an office every day. And coupled with the fact I wasn't qualified in any way, coupled with the fact that it was the worst mining recession in Australia's history at that point. And it started to become really horrendous. And I was just like lying in bed longer, and leaving the office earlier and caring less, and like, just, it wasn't me. I was that sort of bubbly, effervescent character was just slowly being forgotten. And so got enough was enough at one point, and I thought, right, this needs to change. I need to change. Everything that I'm doing work wise needs to change. So what does that look like? And the upshot of that is the work that I do now is just is living through that misalignment and seeing how easily it can creep up on you.
Hey, my friends, thank you for listening to the interview so far. We are 6. Yes, Always Better Than Yesterday has been in existence for 6 whole years. And as a thank you for being part of this community, I'm going to give you a special offer. We don't usually do special offers and discounts around here because we offer so much for free. But on this occasion, I want to offer you 6 sessions for the price of 3. I can help you connect with your heart set. I can help you bring more of your heart work to the world, and I can help you leave more of a heartprint on those around you. It's 6 sessions for the price of 3. You have until the 30th of June to claim this offer. And one final thank you for being here. We are 6. Here's to the next 6 years of Always Better Than Yesterday. We hope that you being part of our community leaves you better for those who need you. It's 6 sessions for the price of 3. You can claim this offer by DMing us at Always Better Than Yesterday UK on Instagram. Email us podcast@abty.co.uk. And here we go. Back to the interview. Thank you for being here, friends. Yeah, so the first time I met you, you did a little talk in a networking space in Bradford, and you talk about this concept of grind to aligned, and I guess this is the period of your life that characterizes the grind, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, not all 5 years in Australia were like that, but certainly the last 3 for sure. Just when your personality is being muted, when you're not leveraging your gifts, and you don't even know about it half the time. And when it's conscious, it becomes even more painful because you can do something about it, but then sometimes fear stops us moving away from it. And life's too short to live in that for too long.
I love what you put in your website about your journey, because it's like people like you and I, we get interviewed about our journey, and I guess we've been able to reflect in such a way that we can package it, but it almost looks like like we did this and this and this, and then we end up here. And I love the honesty that you bring. It's just like, I had no idea really what I was doing. To be honest, I was probably a bit of a dick, and I was pretty much angry, and it's really like it's a testament to your fullest expression, because it is like that is the reality for most people. It's like we only gain this kind of conscious packaging after we've been through 100%.
It. Yeah, I know. And when you're in the world of business and you're trying to sell that journey, it's too easy to fall back on that, and we convince ourselves. I think we often forget. Like, even for me, even for as honest as I think I am on my journey, I think our brain doesn't like the grey, does it? So we try and make it linear when it wasn't, and we like this happened, then this happened, and it wasn't. Like, it's 2 steps forward, 3 steps back sometimes, but that's not good for marketing copy. So that's why people don't do it, and it doesn't sell books when it's messy.
Hey friends, I just wanted to take a quick moment to introduce the new official sponsor of the Always Better Than Yesterday podcast, Matt Media Online Marketing. Matt Media have been involved in the production of over 100 interview sessions. I highly recommend their services. Matt Media Online Marketing are an independent agency who specialise in content marketing, helping business owners get their message seen by the right audience. If you want your business seen through the power of social media, head to mattmedia.online. You can find the link in the show notes. And here we go. Back to the interview. Yeah, when you talk about knowing yourself and finding your playground, I guess many people, maybe less of my audience because they're on this journey, towards where we're headed, but many people, me in particular, particularly when I was at the police, I was in somebody else's playground. I was playing by somebody else's rules. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, and then along with that, you end up becoming someone who you think you need to be to either to advance, like to play by their rules and to win in advance, or to even just, safety, fit in and belong. And I guess those are the antithesis of what it is that you represent. So I'd love to hear a bit about kind of what does it mean to be untamed, and why might someone really be in a position to start to try and find themselves in their playground?
Yeah, I think, I mean, the latter is a big one. To answer the question formally, I mean, being untamed is when you are at your, like, you just use the word fullest expression, which I like. I don't, it's not a term I often use, or I don't think I've ever used, but I love it. That's essentially what it is. It's when you are, it's when you're showing up to the world in the most authentic way, and not in one particular way, because we are a package of multiple characters. We do have our angry sides and our loving sides and our this, that, and the other, but it's when we're showing up from a place of peace with who we are. We're not trying to be somebody we're not. We have the awareness over it. We are living our gifts. We are, the energy that we're showing up with is a pure energy. It's not a constrained energy. And it's when we're coming from that place, when we're in our playground, you know, when we are untamed, which, however you want to phrase it, that's when we are adding the most amounts of value. That's when life feels, and I'm cautious to use the word effortless, because life very rarely feels effortless, certainly for a sustained period of time, because there are challenges in life. But it's when it feels more effortless. The grind is when it feels like you're swimming upstream, and it's probably somebody else's freaking stream as well. It's like you have to flap about so hard just to stay where you are. That's kind of the antithesis. So when you're in your flow, the visualization that works for me, and everyone's got their own, is like, I'm in a rubber ring or tube, and I'm floating down the river, and it's still a journey. You still get to see stuff, and you're still moving, but it doesn't feel like constant flapping and constant energy. It's actually, you know what I mean? It's an efficient, joyous journey to be on, versus one that just feels like it feels exhausting.
Yeah. I'm not shy in being controversial, but I think more men these days are tamed than ever. I think there's a taming of men, and you know, maybe we'll dive into why that might be and some of the reasons. But the paradoxical nature, I think, of a tamed man is people might instinctively think, oh, an untamed man, he sounds quite a dangerous guy. But I think the opposite's kind of dangerous. An untamed man, or a tamed man who isn't being true to himself, has maybe got these repressed feelings and emotions, is self-centered and looking to do things to numb the, like, that's a dangerous guy. A guy that can't regulate himself and his emotions. Like, we don't want, I don't think, tamed men.
No, God, no.
Because they exert their power in other ways. I'd love to know your perspective on the need for men to find themselves in this untamed way.
I don't think I've ever talked about it as explicitly as this. The way you just put that then is just, it's so unbelievably true that we so many of us are fear driven. We come from a place of lack, and we think that if I'm winning, if I'm tamed, other people are going to be struggling. If I'm making money, other people are losing money. If I'm getting all the love, other people are giving away the love or losing it. And it's the opposite. If we're all coming from a place of our peace of who we are, then the world is a better place, and the people around us. There will be people, and I was talking about this with a client on Tuesday. She's going through her own untaming journey. For the first time in her life, she's starting to lean into who she really is. And I said, you're going to meet obstacles along the way, because the people around you are there because they like who you are now,
right?
For better or for worse.
Yeah.
And it's the same with men and women. But you're bang on that when we start to repress any feeling, when we try and fit in, that what we're doing is masking it. It doesn't, like me in Australia, it doesn't go away. It just means that it's hidden and it comes out in an episode. For me, I was angry and drinking loads more at the weekend, and falling out with my partner at the time, who's now my wife. Thankfully, she managed to survive that. We survived that initial period where I was misaligned, or being a dick, however you want to phrase it. And we are much happier now, because I know who I am, and I know what I need in my life to support that and to make me feel whole. And she knows the same for her. And the relationships are not 50-50, they're 100-100. And the fullest expression, to go back to your phrase, of a man is the masculine and the feminine energy. It's not, that doesn't mean we're just going to walk around bare chested and just rip things with our teeth. That means we are in touch with the feminine side, which I wasn't when I was tamed, when I was living out of my playground. The feminine side of me was what was being muted, because that's what I feared. That if I showed the world, I'd be judged, especially my family. That's a lot of where the sort of repressed side of that came from. But as soon as I started to tap into the more sensitive, vulnerable side, that's the fullest me.
The things you care about.
Absolutely.
Things
I mean, we all have both of those sides of us.
Yeah. And if we don't connect with the things we care about, then how will we be surrounded by things we care about? And I guess one of the things that kind of comes up for people is if they've been conditioned with this idea that work isn't play, work can't be fun, you can't make money doing what you love, then people like you and I, when we start to talk about do what you love and find your playground, the first thing we encounter is this cognitive dissonance of, well, that's not possible.
Yeah, certainly not for me anyway.
Right. And so what we represent is something that is effectively the enemy. We repel that idea because it's not possible. And I guess, you know, in the good book, it says those with ears, let them hear. And I guess for me, I'm unable to help that person. If there is an unbelief, you know, not even a disbelief, not even a passive, but a literal unbelief, then it's okay. Cool. We're not destined to be working together. But I've seen so many of your testimonials. I've seen so many of the good people that have come to your events, your coaching. There's like full on transformation. There's like full on people have these moments where it's just like, oh man, I'm going back to life different. What is it like to witness and experience those? I mean, obviously you curate the experience, but what's it like being a leader of those types of experiences?
It's like crack. It's just, it's amazing. Like it is like a drug, the coaching. And I think that's why so many people are drawn to it more and more so now. Yeah. Having that connection with somebody, and not just a connection with somebody on a surface level, or having the connection with the learned side of somebody, but seeing and knowing that you, or believing that you helped the authentic side of them come out, even if it's just for the last night of a 3-day event. And then you know they're going to go back and they're going to be fighting gravity to an extent, and the world will try and pull them back into shape again. But being part of that journey and seeing them show up for who they are, it's absolutely phenomenal. And it's such an honor to be able to do that. And sometimes you work with people and that happens later. Sometimes they're just primed and ready and they want it right now. And like you say, there's no time or energy that I'm going to spend on convincing people of the work that I do, because that's time wasted. I'm a small, even if I was a large organization, it'd be time wasted, but especially when you're a one-man band, and proudly so, any energy I spend trying to convince is wasted. So the people I'm working with are the people that they know they want it. They don't know what it looks like. They're afraid, but the good fear that they're prepared to lean into. So when you can see somebody who's gone through that journey and you know what they've had to overcome, the resistances they've fought to get to that point, it's phenomenal.
One of the so you and I were both on John Kenny's Relationship Guide podcast, and in that episode you talk about this idea of change that you had, and it's like 3 things about change. It was understanding the status quo, kind of where you are and the cost of staying where you are, and then the last step was the resistances that you just talked about. But the one in the middle is this idea of falling in love with an alternative, creating such a compelling vision for the future. And I understand that you did that first for yourself before you took others through that.
Yeah, very much so. And again, this is another one of those retrofitting a model that was something I went through partly consciously, but certainly not with the same level of intentionality in terms of the steps. But yeah, first step, understanding the cost of the status quo. You're not going to change unless you realize that where you are right now is actually costing you financially, emotionally, energetically, whatever. But then the second step, because humans are designed, we don't like change. Change is fearful. Think back to when we're in, primal selves, the hunter-gatherer. Like for most people, change was death. Like why would you go and seek another cave out when this one's perfectly
Which
average?
Is why people say better the devil you know, right? It's like, at least they know this one.
100%. And unfortunately, that is so true in most areas of our lives at some point or another. So it's like if you're going to sell software to a company, your software has to be 7 to 10 times better, apparently, than the incumbents because of the switching costs, the unknowns, whatever. So you've got to be so unbelievably better. And it's the same with any change in your life. You've got to tip the scale. So the second part of it is, well, okay, so you know the status quo is currently costing you, and you've been brutally honest with yourself about that, which is the bit that people miss because they're in a relationship and they don't want to realize how bad the relationship is, because there's a lot of emotional what do you call it, connotations, anchors involved in that. but so you've got to do that. But then you've also the second phase, as you say, is, well, what's the alternative? Okay, I know this is shit. Well, what does the next phase look like? I have to have we have to have something else to move to. There's not just, and especially if it's a very hard, big change in our mind, the new thing has to be significantly more appealing than the situation we're in. So for me, it was, I'm running this engineering business in Australia. Oh wow, this isn't me at all. This is not only is it not me, it's costing me. It's tiring. I'm stressed. I'm putting on weight. I'm drinking more. Yada yada. Well, what the hell do I do now? Because that information alone wouldn't be enough. So then I started. Well, who do I want to be, and what do I want to? How do I want to live? So I started surrounding myself with social media, through events, face-to-face stuff, people in the local community, people who were living what I considered to be themselves, like a life that was free for them. So then it started to become a thing that wasn't just for other people. It was possibility for me as well. And the more I fell in love with it, the more crystal clear I got with that vision, which happened to be a living as a nomad.
Yep.
Then the more it became possible, and the more that transformation from the status quo to the thing, it not only was it possible, it was a genuine, at one point, no-brainer. There is not a question of whether this is going to happen or not. It's just a case of when exactly is it going to be.
I said on Facebook recently, I said, what if your no-brainer was an all heart? Like all heart, because that's kind of what we're getting clear on, isn't it? Is like, what's my heart's desire of how I want to live, who I want to be whilst I'm doing that, and who I want to be surrounded by. That goes beyond the intellect. And I think that no-brainer is an all heart decision.
Yes, it is. You've got to get out of your head. The fact that we're in our head is what had led us often to the situation we're in, because we overthink things. Whenever I ask a client about when they were at their absolute best, their most authentic, whether it's successful, whatever for them, whenever I asked them, I said, well, how much were you thinking during that time? How much were you planning? How much were you like, oh, I just wasn't. I just kind of went off instinct. That's why. It's those times. But then we become self-doubt. We start to self-doubt. And then we need to be on ahead to engineer the life that we need. And that's when the wheels start to fall off, in my opinion.
I had a Formula One journalist on the podcast a couple of years ago. His name's Clive Brolin, and he would interview, throughout the 90s and 2000s, people like Michael Schumacher. And he said, and you think about Michael Schumacher, the German, you think he's quite a thinker, but actually he was quite a present guy in his body. And one of the things that he had said to Clyde is that if I'm thinking about my braking spot, if I'm actively thinking, I lose 10% lap time. And you say, wow, like that's just next level, just to show how when we are just fully present in that moment, living out of our being rather than our thinking, then we can tap 100%. Into something.
And that, I mean, Formula One driver is a great example, because I'm a big Formula One fan, and I talk about flow a lot. And I want to help people find out what flow means for them. And that's what it is. It's when we're not in our heads, we're just following off our instincts, and we're challenged just to the right amount. And Ayrton Senna's a great example, where one of these amazing laps, I think there's an actual onboard camera during it, because it wasn't common back then. He felt like he was above the car. It was just, he wasn't part of it. It was like outer body type experience, which is the definition, I believe, of flow. And it's, like you say, as soon as you start thinking about these things, especially when you're at the speeds they're going at, you miss it. It's gone.
That is the exact example that Clyde gave around why he became so fascinated with this idea of flow and Formula One specifically. Like, absolutely. So he came on the show, and I think he was fortunate enough to interview Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, who was the godfather of that kind of concept. So yes, I love the synchronicity of that conversation. And I guess one of the things that you talk about on your website is, it's very clear front page, like about reconnecting with yourself, with others, and your work. And I'd like to take the conversation in a slightly different way, which is, why do you think people are so disconnected?
Oh, I think there's a lot of reasons. I think we're in our heads, to go back to what we just talked about, and we think we need to be a certain way. Right. I think when we start to lose the self-awareness, I say lose it. To be honest, a lot of the time we're only aware in our hearts, and when we can drop into that instinct, which is, and when we have when we live such distracted lives, such fast lives, whether it's social media, whether it's the world that we think we need to conform to, we don't often get the chance to check in and say, well, what do I want from me? And then if you think about, by the time you're like 18 months old, the amount of inputs you've had from other people, and we're like a sponge when we're babies, because we don't have a clue who we're supposed to be, where we fit into the world, and so we're going off what other people are imposing upon us. So their model of the world becomes our model of the world, and it's too easy to keep going, especially when it's quite a strongly imposed way of being. And then that translates to the working world, which then continues, and we don't spend as much. I mean, there's a great book called Lost Connections. You're familiar with it. Johan Hari. I read it voraciously last year, I think, and
so good.
He breaks it up, and I can't remember all of the ways in which he believes that we are disconnected. But less time in nature. We're not being true to our bodies. We're obese. We're in technology all the time. We're not really connected in social media. We've got more connections than ever, but no real friendships.
Shitty workplaces, shitty leaders, shitty values.
There's a million reasons why, unfortunately. We're not sleeping enough. So just coming back to that.
Completed
point.
It, mate.
Yeah. Nailed it. It's such a. I think it's so important, because, and especially from the world of coaching, it'd be too easy to think that as a coach, it's up to you to guide them or to tell them where they think they should be. But all you need to do is help them reconnect with themselves, and they know all the answers. All the answers are inside.
Yeah, it's not about being a guru.
No, absolutely not.
I love that you talk about your coaching often involves cold water immersion and a campfire. I just love that as an imagery. Like, why do you think those experiences are powerful?
Again, one of these retrofitted ones. I just like doing it, and then you can find the science that backs it up. I just personally love it, and I think there's a lot of science that talks about the connection with nature, being outside. The guy who used to run my events for me used to call it fire caveman TV, and there's just something about it where you can sit and look at it for hours, and being around the campfire in a circle, especially if it's with colleagues, that it's an environment you're not normally in. You're in a circle rather than face to face over a desk. You're outside rather than in a fluorescent lit boardroom, and it's just much more conducive to being yourself and to dropping your guard and dropping the ego. And then cold water, it's just our back in the day, we used to put ourselves through chronic stress, acute stress all the time. When we're running away from things that were trying to kill us, when we're really cold, when we're really hungry, and our bodies have become, we need that in our bodies in order to be healthy. Because when we start to get into a fight or flight for a short period of time, then it's really good for our skin, it's good for our heart. All of the really important stuff gets ignored, and all the important stuff gets focused on. But we don't really have those anymore. But we do have chronic stress, which is underlying drip feeding of cortisol. And that's what's killing us. That's what's related to so many lifestyle diseases, even as things like cancer. It comes back to, so many of them come back to stress, and we get stressed for non-life-threatening things. It's about the stress of, did somebody ignore us on social media? Did I get negative feedback from my boss? Am I wanted? Did I get rejected by a client? There's a million things.
Why is my Wi-Fi cutting out?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And that's the dangerous one, because that just kills you over time, and it's just a drip feed, and we barely notice it. So just getting out into cold water is a short, sharp, acute, stressful moment, which our body needs in short bursts, is just very, very good for us. And doing that regularly, there's loads of science behind why that's beneficial.
Yeah, system reset. And I guess, is the G-string optional?
Yeah, encouraged, I'd say. I'd go beyond optional. I'd go encouraged. G-string, mankini, whatever you're vibing.
Yeah, on regional news.
There you go. Yeah, I'm a stickler for a camera. What can I say?
Yeah, I've loved watching the journey of the icebreakers. It's just, there's 2 days where it happens. It's just not convenient for me. I need to stop making that excuse and just get down there. And because I go to the river down at Farley with a good friend of mine, so I am doing it. It's just I think there's something powerful about this community of people, this community of men. What's it like being part of the icebreakers?
Oh, it's been amazing, actually. It was one of the first things I plugged into when we moved here, and it's been phenomenal. It's like you say, it's a community. I don't know if there's 100 people in the WhatsApp group now, all blokes. And Wednesday mornings 6:30 and Sunday mornings 8. And since I've had a child, obviously the Wednesday mornings are out. That is time that's unfortunately can't be put towards wild swimming or dipping. But there's something about voluntarily putting yourself through discomfort.
Yeah.
Again, going back to the thing, we just don't do that anymore. And doing so alongside other people when it's either snowy, frosty, or drizzly, pitch dark on a December or January morning at 6:30, and you're about to get to this river that you can barely see. Like, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
And then you get out and you're like, oh yeah, that's what I mean. You're freezing. Don't get me wrong, but you get out and you're like, that was amazing, and you just get that adrenaline hit, the endorphins, all the brown fats, but doing so alongside other people, and it's just like you say about you going back to before about a dangerous man, an untamed man is a dangerous man. Like these people, in various degrees of on their journey, are in that moment especially are untaming themselves. They are in nature, they're doing something primal but they're also connected with themselves. There's vulnerability there, there's support for the group. It's a brilliant organization.
Yeah, I love that. I said something recently, and this is this idea of spirituality and being spiritual, because I think the Western world has made spirituality about a look and a yoga mat and all these types of things and crystals. Whereas I gave this story about if a man goes to the lake and he fishes for a day and he returns home and the fruits of his spirit are more loving, kind, patient, and is more self-control, then that activity is spiritual because his spirit, the fruits of his spirit are more like love. And I think the same is true of when, these men go to rewild and untame, which is going into that difficult environment, doing stuff that's difficult, doing stuff that is beyond what the comfort would like us to do. And absolutely, those men go back to life, more capable of managing stress, more capable of self-control, loving presence. So I have a huge respect and admiration for anybody who's going to put themselves into that situation so that they may come back to life better for whoever those that need them.
Yeah, and exactly that. They come back as better husbands, better fathers, better, and people join the group for different reasons. Some are like really struggling with mental health challenges. Some people like me, I just wanted to, because I was new to the area, I wanted to just plug into a community and make some really good friends and just do something a bit hard. But yeah, you're absolutely bang on. People go home, generally speaking, in a lot better place than when they arrived.
You recently become a father in the last year, and you're on this journey. You've got this self-awareness. You've got your understanding of your playground. Like fatherhood's tough as it is, let alone without having. I mean, I my wife and I, we have a 10-year-old, so I've probably been on this journey about 8-9 years. So like in the early days of my son. So I wasn't kind of there where I really knew myself, knew what stressed me out, knew how to manage my stresses, knew how to communicate effectively with my partner. Yeah. So by the grace of God, we are still together as a tight family, but we've had to learn these things as we go. What do you think, fathers, mothers, parents can do to really build that self-awareness in a parenting kind of setting and how that might help them in some of those trying testing situations?
Well, a valid question. Before I go anywhere, I just want to say I'm 5 months into this. I'm in no position to claim expert status on this.
I am not your guru.
I am not your guru. Definitely not. Certainly not in parenting. But
I think this is really a relevant point to make, because here's a guy that's been running about an organization called Know Yourself, Find Your Playground, and then the humbling nature of becoming a parent.
Exactly. Nothing knocks you down a peg or two quicker than being a parent. Yeah. What I will say is, I'm really grateful and glad that we had our first when we did. So we've been together. We've known each other for 20 something years. We met when we were 10 years old on the rugby pitch. And we were really good friends from the age of about 17. We've lived nomadically around the world. She's been there we got together during my most difficult time. I've seen her in her most difficult times. We've lived in a camper van together. We've lived we've been through so much. And which has strengthened us, but we've also done personal development work together. Obviously, the work I do, it lends itself to introspection. I've got my own coach. I've had him for a number of years. Kim's been on her own journey. She's got accountability groups that she's in. She's had coaching, and so much of that is foundational for having a child, because it's not about like knowing what to do in the situation. It's about having a foundation of understanding and empathy to fall back on. And yeah, of course we still cock it up sometimes when we're both tired. That's when the proverbial hits the fan. But it's just knowing, for us anyway, okay, we catch it quite quickly. We're not, one of us or both of us are not being our best selves at the moment. Is now the time to hash this out, or should we just sort of leave it for now with love and come back to it? So I think for anybody, like I say, this, I'm not an expert parent by any stretch, but the foundations are the same whether you've got a kid or not. It's just heightened when you've got a child. It's just understanding who you are when you're at your best, when you're not at your best. What are the signs? What kind of things trigger you? I mean, we go away every year in January to plan the year ahead. We review the year just gone, we plan the year ahead, and we go somewhere like really nice and like in nature somewhere. And this year we did it in November because we knew that we'd have Teddy by January. And half the time we were there, it was parenting conversations. It was like, what are you most worried about from me as a parent? What am I most worried about you as a parent? Where do you think our strengths are? Where do we think we're going to trip up? What could we work on? All that kind of stuff. And that was really informative. So just understanding, I think, and love. Just
it's just taking the time. So often I interviewed a wonderful couple called John and Anna Mann, who co-wrote the Go Giver Marriage, and they said if the TV's on, the TV becomes a conversation. And so many people are, living a life where they're communicating with each other via whatever they're watching and observing. And actually, how wonderful is it to have a conversation that doesn't need to be every day, but once a week, once a month, once a quarter, whatever it is, those types of introspective conversations. How are we being? Who do we want to be for each other? What do we bring? Like the most powerful, and my wife and I went through some struggles. And so we had to make some recommitment to be better for each other. And in doing so, we had that kind of like journals out. Let's write some of these questions. It was too late for us at this point. So we had that icky feeling of, like we should have done this sooner, but we're glad we did, because, the grace that we've been able to gain, particularly with this revelation that when we demonstrate stress, so often we take that out on each other and we take it personally. Whereas what we're sidestepping now is that actually that's a human being with an unmet need.
Yeah, 100%.
And that level of grace gives us access to so much more kindness and love in that situation than what we would have done in our late 20s, because we didn't have that awareness. We just thought behavior was character. And it's just like, okay, I get it now. That behavior isn't because you're angry at me, it's because you're stressed. Cool, I can help with that.
Exactly. I'm not taking it personally. There's an unattachment there. One of the biggest lessons I learned a while ago was that most, if not probably all, confrontations happen because both parties are trying to be understood rather than understand. And we're both trying to be heard in that moment, and we get triggered by the things that are told, because again, it's a need that's not being met. And just being able to reconcile that, or realize it when it's happening, either when it's happening or shortly after, and then having the confidence, or I suppose the trust in yourself in the relationship to then own that and say, sorry, yeah, this is how I was showing up, is so big. But going back to saying before, a lot of us are coming from a place of fear or lack. So we don't have the bandwidth or the trust to ask them how they're doing, because we think we're ceding power, we're ceding airtime in that, and we're not going to get it back. But we have to be, one of the people in the relationship has to be the person to step up to say, okay, I'm going to be understanding here. How can I help? How can I help? And just trust that you keep doing that enough, it's going to start coming back. And if it doesn't start coming back, that's when you make a decision as to whether or not this is the relationship to be in, but not before.
Yeah, 100%. And this is where that, like you say, things aren't linear, and sometimes I'll be the one capable of doing that. And sometimes I'm going to need you to step up and remind me who I truly am, and call me accountable to who I want to be. And it's wonderful to have these type of conversations, because even on the type of work that we do, we'll still need to draw upon. And I think that's really important for people that ended up working with us to know, is that this stuff isn't easy. And that's why I think it's called courage, is because we're trying to be who we want to be in a world that puts constant stresses and pressures and tries to draw us away from that. And none more so than the energy that's drawing parents out of the home. you know, the lure of work and status and respect and promotion and money, like, it's drawing energy away from probably what's most important to a lot of people, which is the very nearest and dearest around them.
Very true. I work with a lot of nearly everyone I work with is very driven in some way or another, usually career wise. And I work with a lot of women, and they have that same sort of energy of, I need to be enough. I need to prove myself. If they've had it, and it's the men as well. But in this specific conversation about being drawn away from the home, it's particularly prescient because I've had a number of conversations. One recently with a client I've worked with for a long time. She's over in the US. She's been driven from the age of like 8 years old to be top of the gym class, this, that, and the other, for reasons that, you know, her way of being seen and heard was through achievement.
Yeah.
Some people's way of being seen and heard is through playing the victim or running away or causing trouble or doing whatever. Hers just happened to be achievement, which societally is more acceptable, but it's still as costly in the long run. But to the point where she's a mother of 2 children, and she's working her all hours God sends to try and pay for a nanny to do the job that she's only just starting admitting that she really wants to do herself, which is be with her children. Her ego, how she feels she needs to show up, the identity she needs to bring to the world to fit in, hasn't allowed her to accept or to lean into, just in inverted commas, being a mum, and that's all she wants to do.
I'm reading a book called The Boy Crisis by Dr. Warren Farrell, and in it he talks about how he led this men's workshop, and he was asking these men, you know, where's the hole in your heart? And this one attendee said, oh, you know, I've really missed out on raising my first son. I don't want to miss the second. I want to be home and I want to be present. I want to be a stay-at-home dad for my second. The next question was, well, what would you do if money was no object? He's like, well, I would just be a stay-at-home dad. I'd do that. And that man was John Lennon.
No way.
John Lennon missed raising his first son.
Wow.
So with the love and support of Yoko, he made the decision to stop touring, to stop producing music, and he stayed at home to raise his second son. Yet the resistance, this is what you said earlier, the resistance, the world was like, you know, management were like, we need another album. His bandmates are like, well, we can't tour without you. And he's just like, no, the hole in my heart is this is what I want to do. And all, you know, all that stress and all that pressure.
Wow, fair play to him. I mean, that is a lot of external stress, not just your family or your friends or whatever, but the world, like literally millions and millions of people.
The expectation,
around the world.
right? Yeah. But I guess that's the difference. We can live a life based on the expectations of others, but again, it's not really truly our playground then, is it? If it's lived by the rules and expectations of other people.
No, absolutely not. And that's one of the biggest challenges. But people used to ask me a lot, right? What's the one thing I can do to sort of help me be more untamed or be more myself or whatever? And I've wrestled with it for quite a while, but I believe it is curate your environment, because the environment that you're surrounded by, and I mean like physically, but more so the people, they, I believe, have the largest single impact on how we show up, how we feel the need to show up, especially when it's people around us who we either care about deeply or we just are drawn to showing up for. So friends, family, colleagues, co-workers, loved ones. If you can curate your environment so your environment supports and encourages you to be your best self, your chances of success are so unbelievably higher, so much higher than if they're not. And unfortunately for a lot of people, and it's not just the fact that they are surrounded by people who are not very nice. It's human nature. Like I said, we are drawn to people because of who they are now, not who, most of the time, not who we think they could be. So we married somebody because they meet our needs and we meet their needs in that moment. And then I see all the time, if one person starts to grow, which obviously with clients, they're on that journey, and a lot of the time their spouse is not willing to go on that journey, and they reject it because that's not what they got into. And all of a sudden that one person outgrows the other one. And that's where the biggest conflict starts. So if you can curate your environment to be surrounded by people who support that growth, that's why mentors are critical, because they're so much less attached to the present version of you. Makes a huge difference.
I love that. And I think there's a couple of perspectives even within that, which is, you know, get a group of people who support and who you are, but also who you want to be. You know, go and spend time with people who are doing what it is that you want to do.
Yes.
And I think the wonderful thing that happens is that rather, you know, sometimes we have that crabs in the bucket mentality, right? Which is when you're escaping the bucket, you're escaping the status quo of where you're currently at. Those around you who love you for who you are bring you back down, because it's like, well, if you're growing, what does that mean about me if I'm not? But then when you go around people who are doing the things that you want to do, the minute you say, I can't do this, they do the opposite. They reach your hand down and they pull you back up and they say, this is who you are. This is who you're becoming. This is who's going to benefit from who you become. Keep going. You know, it's a very, very different feeling, isn't it? It's a very, very different. And I completely agree with you. Who you surround yourself with is very, very powerful. But you first have to take that moment to think about, who is it that I want to be, or who is it that I am, and what am I looking for in those people to, and then give them the willful permission to kick your ass when you're not being that person.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You've got to own it. You've got to put it out to the world. Yeah, big time.
Yeah. My son was being bullied at school. He's 10. Do you know what he's being bullied about? The fact that he hadn't had any Prime.
I don't even know what that means.
Mate, Prime, you know, this drink for the YouTubers that they've brought out.
This energy
is that
drink? The thing that's gone Yeah.
So social, you know, this social.
Wow.
Yeah. So because he hadn't had any, they were like, oh, you haven't had any Prime. And he's obviously taking it personally because it feels. And I said, right, let's start to look at the people who are bullying you. Like, what is, are they captain of their footy team? Are they intelligent? Have they got good friends? Are they really liked? And, you know, no. Well, what is the one thing that they've done that you've not got? They've drunk Prime. Great. So why do you think then that they're using that against you? Because that is the only thing that they've got against you that you haven't got. I was like, dude, it's not about you. It's not about you.
I'm interested. How did he take that? Because I have no idea how these conversations would go with the 10-year-old. Was he open and receptive, or is it something you're like, you'll get this eventually? I'm just going to keep.
So he understood the crabs in the bucket story, but what he doesn't understand is, well, why would someone do that? So he got the idea that if you start to escape or start to ascend and grow, then others just. And I think he's starting to kind of just like, well, but why would someone, like, there's a purity to that, isn't it?
Yes.
Why would people do that? And I go, well, who knows? But all we can say is that it's to do with something inside of them that says, I worry that I am not that. I worry I am not capable of that.
Yeah, it's a them thing, not a you thing.
Sure. Yeah, 100%. You do some chaotic and crazy things like running an ultra marathon without any preparation. Why do you do stuff like that?
It's probably a rejection of the fact that I'm now not a nomad, living as a nomad, and I'm in a cul-de-sac in Bradford-on-Avon, and just feeling the need to bring something like that back. I mean, I'd say that half jokingly. There's a need there. The need for adrenaline, or not really, I suppose, adrenaline with an ultra run it's a horrible experience. But the need for variety, the need for uncertainty, the need to push yourself, they are easy to meet when you're living as a nomad and you don't know where you're going to be in 2 months' time. You've got to start afresh with friends and things like that, but harder to meet when you are living the lifestyle that I'm currently living, especially because, you know, I'm not plugged into extreme sport. Wiltshire's not great for extreme sports. I don't know if people know, your audience know Wiltshire very well, but it's not known for its
paraglide off the White Horse.
Alpine skiing. Yeah, there you go. I've never seen that here, actually. Why not? That should be a bigger thing. But I've always liked that. I lived, living in Whistler for 5 years. That just ticked that box ridiculously. Like skiing as fast as I can on one leg over blind crests, like really stupid stuff, but just makes me feel so alive. So doing the physical stuff every now and again, it's scratching that itch to an extent, and it's pushing myself, and it's another form of growth. You get growth through spirituality or through financial means, through your relationship, but also through physically, through pushing yourself.
Yeah. Where is Whistler? Is it by a coast or is it mainland?
It's inland. Well, it's Canadian relative to Canada. It's coastal. So it's west coast of Canada. Vancouver is right on the coast, and it's a 3-hour drive, kind of up the coast and inland. So as the crow flies, it's probably only a couple of hours in a small plane, but driving due west from Whistler to the coast will take you days because everything does over there. But it's pretty close.
friend of mine from my previous career, she went and lived in Canada, Vancouver, for a couple of years, and it was just like crystals, like sea, lakes, mountains. Like you got surfing and mountains all within the space of one day, and I was just like, oh, I need to delete you for a little while.
I can't do without. Not for me, thank you.
Yeah,
No, it's an amazing place. It's an absolutely amazing, like proper playground in the truest sense.
Yeah. Is there anything I haven't asked you that you'd love to talk to my audience about?
No, I suppose that it depends what your audience is looking for. I think one of a big thing, a question I get asked a lot is like where do I start? How do I know if I do want to grow or change? If I do feel there's an itch, like how do I know what to look for? And then what do I do when I feel that itch? So I suppose that would be worthwhile. I think it could be impactful for your audience to touch on, just to help, just to help kind of set the scene for people. And there will be a lot of people listening to this that are on different stages of the journey. Some are like, there's a massive buzzing noise in their ear that's telling them they need to do something about it, and for them it's an easier, they're already at that point where they need to make a change. And for those people I'd say stop messing around and just start making change. It doesn't have to be big, but just start doing an audit of your life and where you want to get to. Start surrounding yourself with people who are living what they consider to be fun, and just start exploring like what sits well with you, what doesn't. And there'll be some people at the other end of the spectrum who are like, "No, fine. No. I'm so okay. It's not even funny." And I can't really speak to them other than to say, be open to the fact that there may be some misalignments in your life, and that's not me to try and create a challenge that isn't there.
Yeah,
because I can't physically do that. It's about you being open to the fact that there may be something more. Like you may say your status quo is a 7 out of 10 at the moment. So here's a question I ask a lot of people. I use a spectrum when I ask people questions because we like the black and the white, and we don't like the gray often. And it forces us to, when I say something like, okay, so do you enjoy your job? It's either a yes or no answer when you phrase it like that. So a lot of people go, well, they have to say yes because they've spent 20 years pursuing it.
Yeah, all the sacrifices I've made. Yeah.
Exactly.
It has to be worth it.
It has to be. So I kind of move away from that and then give them a spectrum and say, right, on the scale of 1 to 10, at this present moment, how much do you feel aligned in your job and fulfilled? And there's a couple of qualifiers in there which gets rid of the ego, and we can kind of allow ourselves to land with the question and go, okay, so it's only at this moment, right? Yeah. So it doesn't mean forever, right? At this moment, I'd say I'm a 6.
Yeah.
And then a follow-up question always is, oh, right. And if it wasn't a 6, what might it be? Okay. Maybe a 5, maybe even a 4. So just, that's kind of a steer for anyone who's on that path. Like avoid the yes or no's because people will ask you yes or no questions all the time, which forces you to go with the confirmation bias direction.
Yeah.
So ask yourself on a spectrum, and then just ask yourself, right, if it wasn't that, what might it be? You don't have to do anything with that answer just now, but the awareness is the first step. Just sit with that, and then only once you've got that, you can actually take intentional steps forward.
Yeah, and the top of your LinkedIn thing, it says humble high performers. You work with humble high performers. I've just finished a book called Letting Go by Dr. David Hawkins. And in it, he describes humility is not an emotion. Humility is not something we can say we are. It's something we can be and demonstrate. So the humility is characterized by our belief that maybe we don't know it all. Maybe there is a possible, improvement, something I could learn, something I can grow. So the humility element is characterized by our actual predisposition to entertain some of your questions anyway.
Very much so. You can't go on this journey if you're not humble. And people think there's a great quote. I don't know where it comes from, but humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less.
Yeah.
And I think there's a big part when it says thinking of yourself less. I think there's a big ego point in that, and that's where humility clashes, or we can't reach humility because the ego's in the way. So if we're not prepared to see that we are maybe not on the right path, or we maybe have more to give, or we've maybe ignored the negative feedback or certain feedback we've had for many years, then we're never going to go through that journey.
It's the ego's desire for certainty, respect, power, control, whatever it might be. And it gives the illusion, knowing gives the illusion, knowing I'm in control, I've got this. You're just saying whatever is rigid breaks, right? It's
very true. Very true. Yeah. I'm being humbled enough to say, I don't know.
Well, I guess, you put yourself into humbling situations. This is the great thing, isn't it? It's character refining. It's iron sharpens iron, cold water stuff, putting yourself into these chaotic situations. That there are points where you have to learn how to go, this is beyond me. I have to either be accepting and willing to accept help or insights or learning, or the
Very true.
humility to go and say, oh, sorry, I didn't do that. Didn't do that to the best of my abilities. I wasn't who I wanted to be in that moment.
Of course, and being surrounded by people who are okay with that, who respect that humility.
Yeah. What have you got coming up for the rest of the year? Have you got any more events scheduled? How can people connect with you and find out more about the work that you do?
Yeah, we do. We've got an event coming up in September. It's the first one, it's the first sort of multi-day event I've run since this time last year. So I'm really excited about it. It's called Untamed Potential, and it's designed to help people not just uncover that voice that they have maybe been hiding from the world, but give it a name and give themselves permission to pursue not just the dreams they want to pursue, but pursue to be the person they always know they can be. So it's 3 days and nights in Wiltshire in a off-grid sort of glamping. Like the guy hates it when I call it glamping. I can't think of another phrase, but it's basically fire pits and yurts and walks, and we'll be out on the river. And
this is Campwell. You're doing it at Campwell?
This is in Campwell, yeah. And there'll be so in the woods of Campwell, there's a sauna in there, like that overlooks the forest, and it's such a spectacular little place. And it's 3 nights, and it'll be an intimate event, so 12 people or so, and just people who are there willing to ask themselves the questions, support the others on their journey, asking themselves the questions, creating that space to quieten the noise and reconnect with those authentic feelings and doubts and fears and inspirations. And so that's the 19th to the 22nd of September, and that you can learn more about that event or contact me through my website, which is becomeuntamed.com. You can go on the events page. You can another page following that describing Untamed Potential, and yeah, okay, it's gonna be amazing. I haven't even announced it yet. I've already got 4 people committed to it just from some one-on-one invites. So
yeah,
it's gonna be mega.
Oh, I look forward to that. That sounds amazing. I have a word here. I always spent yesterday. It's called Heartprint, which is a word that kind of represents the legacy, the impact, the ripple effect, the possibilities that we create for those that we interact with. And I'd just love for you to consider what you think your heartprint might be.
Oh, I like that. I think it would be something along the lines of just showing up as playfully irreverent as possible, and me connecting between my masculine and my feminine, my serious and my playful, my soft and my hard at the same time, or not same time, but very interchangeably. And I think there's I think from feedback, and I didn't realize this because you don't realize what comes naturally to you, but I think that sort of inspires people to do the same, especially the alpha male types. So I think just showing up as me and not really caring and being a bit of a dick, so to speak, just giving people permission to do the same.
Yeah, I love that. And I think the true alpha male doesn't go around telling the world he's an alpha male. There are many in the social world that are saying, oh, I'm an alpha or I'm an omega. And it's just like, no, you're not. Like, you don't need to. True confidence is not quiet necessarily in the community, but I think there's I read a book called Legacy by James Curate, all about the All Blacks. And there's the Maori proverb that basically, I won't get the Maori right, but it basically says that the sweet potato does not have to profess how sweet he is.
Love it.
Yeah. So it's sheer by that presence, that experiencing of this energy. It's like, oh, okay, I'm going to follow that. And it's leadership, isn't it? I guess we haven't really talked about the topic of leadership, but that is leadership. Is there is something about who you are being in that moment that makes me inspired enough or safe enough to follow your lead.
Exactly. And it's when I've been my worst as a leader is when I've been overthinking and trying to be somebody else. It's when I've showed up as the humble me who probably comes across less serious. That's the side when it's most impactful. And I encourage anyone to do the same. It's like, have the awareness to know what that side of you looks like and feels like, and then have the confidence to actually live it.
Yeah. Jim, great conversation, mate. I look forward to another river walk with you again soon. And just be honoured if you'd leave us a final thought from your good self.
Well, other than to say thank you very much, Ryan. It's been an absolute pleasure. And just I suppose to reiterate that question, just ask yourself, okay, might there be something else on a scale of 1 to 10? What's the likelihood there might be something more for me, that I have more to give, and just be honest enough about the answers to that question, and that'll be the start.
Jim, appreciate it, brother.
Thank you very much, mate.
Thank you for making it to the end of the interview here on YouTube. I hope that our time spent together has left you a little bit better than before you push play. Before you go anywhere, please leave a comment down below, some of your key reflections, your key takeaways. I love hearing from you and what this conversation has inspired in you. Let me know what you're going to do as a result of this conversation. I will be back next Wednesday, where I will share another inspiring guest. To make sure that you don't miss that, please do subscribe, hit the bell, and you will be notified as soon as it goes live. If you're curious to know how I, through Always Better Than Yesterday, can serve you, your team, your organization, please do visit alwaysbetterthanyesterday.com, and it will be my honor and privilege to help you in any way I can. Keep leading, my friends. I've been Ryan Hartley, host of the Always Better Than Yesterday podcast here on YouTube. Always love.